Hi everyone, welcome. This video is intended as a recap for RMIT Industrial Design Flexible Modelling class. It's going to overview the concepts that we looked at in week 3, where we made a grid on a surface, we used an image sampler, and then we drove patterns out of it. For this example, we're going to use the Rolls Royce Cullinan and the cloud patterns that they describe and talk about in their video above the factory in Goodwood. So without any further ado, let's get modelling. Alright, so here we are in Grasshopper and Rhino, and I've got a basic pattern. Half of this pattern I have a surface, and my surface is 175 millimeters by 280 millimeters in height. It's actually flat. It's actually in the XY plane. And we're going to be dividing this surface to get the points to put our circles on for cutting out our leather pattern. Alright. So the first thing we need to do is we need to bring in the surface. So we're going to select one surface and hide that preview away. Now there's two ways that we have previously discussed dividing a surface up. The first one, and the one that I find is probably the easiest to use, is to use Lunchbox. Now that Lunchbox panels and Lunchbox has been rewritten and it works on a Mac, I think that this is really the best way to go in contrast to building a surface and then ISO trimming it. But I'll show you the ISO trim anyway. So what we can do if we want to ISO trim a surface is we need to divide the domain of the surface up, and then what we need to do is to ISO trim it. So under surface utils we have ISO trim, and we put our surface in and we put our divisions in and we get a divided surface. Now we can also put in a diamond panel. Now, the advantage of the diamond panel is that the points in the area, the center of the area of the diamond, are staggered. Yeah, they're literally diamond shaped. Where when we use an ISO trim, we have a grid, and we need to use a cull pattern, and we need to cull every second surface so that we get a diamond pattern. And we need to make sure that we're working clearly with odd and even numbers in order to get the diamond pattern to work right. And this can be quite taxing on the computer. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to set up this surface. So we need to get some numbers for our U and our V. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to take the width and the height and work out if my grid spacing is 5 millimeters. Typically in a car, if you go out and measure the hole spacing, it's around 5 millimeters from center to center. So I've looked at my grid, and I know that if I've got a diamond, I need to have an extra spare 5 millimeters either side. So if it's 175, I take 170 and I divide it by 5. That gets me 34. And if I look at my height, 280, then I make it 275, and that gets me 55. So what I need to do is I can get a panel, and I can put into the panel 55, and I can shrink that down and move it over here, and I can copy it and I can make this one 34. Let's make that 34. Alright, and what we'll need to do to get the pattern to work correctly is we'll actually just need to multiply these by 2. So if I take these numbers, and I copy that, and I get another panel, and I make the number 2, then I can plug that in here, and plug my numbers in, and then I'll get double that number out. So I can plug that into the U, just going to hide, turn the preview off, and you'll see I've got my divisions, and then I'm going to plug this one into the V, and we can see that we have a nice square grid. And we can see that it took 5 milliseconds and 223 milliseconds to get that base grid. And then we want to look at area, the area, and if we come up to surface, we can get area, or we can hold Control Alt and click on that, and it will tell us where it is. So if we plug this in, we'll get all the centers. And we can see the time frame. So the times are under display, canvas widgets, and profiler, I believe, if I'm correct. So if we disable this part of the script and we show the diamonds and we take these numbers and we plug them into the diamonds, we can see here that it's 120 milliseconds, so it's quite faster. So we can adjust these numbers and we'll get this grid showing really quickly. And we can also see that we've already got the diamond patterns that we want to put our circles in. And they roughly equate to the centers 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 units. Center to center, between the center to the top and left to right, for example. So let's grab this area and plug our diamonds in. And we'll get our center points for all the diamonds. We won't get anything for the triangles because they're on the side there. Alright, so clearly I would say that using Lunchbox and using the diamond panels for this type of project is probably the best way to go. Alright. What we're going to do now is we're actually going to use a graph mapper, and we're going to use the graph mapper to scale circles on our points. So if we have the centers, what we can do is, I'm just going to preview that off, we can take these centers and we can draw a circle under curve. We can draw a circle, and the centroids, and we've got a radius of 1, so it's a 2 millimeter circle, and we get our circles on our grid like that. Okay, and what we're going to do is we're going to use a graph mapper to take an image, a black and white grayscale image, and we're going to remove all the points and keep the points on where the graph is, and then apply circles that align to the correct size of the machine that we're using to cut them out. Alright, so let's get a graph mapper. So under params, inputs, we have, sorry, not a graph mapper, image sampler. Image sampler. Let's take the image sampler and place it down here. We're going to take all of these centroids and we're going to plug them in here. And what's that going to do is it's going to use an image and it's going to sample all those centers and give us a value from 0 to 1 on this image here, and then we'll remap the values and we'll scale our circles. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to open a image, And I have a cloud image here that I've made. We can see it here. And what we're going to do is we need to reset the domain, because here our domain is not from 0 to 1. Our domain is from, in the X it's to 175, so 175. And our domain in the Y is to 280. Now that matches the dimension of our surface, and it also matches the dimensions of our image that we've made in Photoshop, and I'll show you that later on. And we can set color brightness to here to this black and white image. And we'll make sure auto updates on, and we'll go OK. And now what comes out of here is a set of values. So if we open up a panel and we plug the panel in, you'll note that we have 3,651 points with a value. Some have a value of 1 and others have a value between 1 and 0. Okay. And here we can see that we have 3,652 points. And if I scroll down there, 3,651. Remember that we start at 0. Alright, so what we're going to do is we can remap these values if we want. And we can fine-tune and adjust them so that they work within a certain value. So what I'm going to do is come to Maths and use our trusty remap numbers, get a min and max bounds, and we will construct a domain. And we're going to take these values from here and plug them in. By double clicking on one of the little dots, we can put a relay in, which helps us connect, disconnect. And we're going to remap that one there. And we're going to get a slider from params, input slider, and we'll have 2. So the top one of the domain, I'm actually going to make 1 and copy it. And the bottom part of the domain, I'll make roughly 0.25. And I'll plug that in. Alright, and what we can see if we get our panel back is that we have results now that run between 0.25 roughly and up towards 1. So the darkest value will be 0.9, roughly 0.9 something. We had a couple here somewhere, there's 0.1, 0.8. But we've remapped all of those values coming out of the image sampler. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to take these centers and I'm going to remove them. So I'll just double click here to get a relay. I'm going to remove the centers, and I'm going to do this with regards to my image here. So if I took these values and I plug them in, you'll note that our pattern is remapped. And you can see I've got all these small circles here. So I want to get rid of these small circles. And the way that we're going to do that is we're going to look at what circles are larger than and what circles are smaller than a particular value. So if we come to Maths, we can get larger than, and we can plug these values in here, and then I can get a slider. I'm just going to copy this one, Control C, Control V, and plug that in. And now we'll get a series of true-false statements, and we need to cull this pattern in order to reduce the number of circles that we have. So under sets, we're going to use cull pattern, and we'll actually need to use cull pattern twice. We need to cull the pattern for the points, and we need to cull the pattern for the radiuses. So here we'll put that into our pattern, and we'll take our numbers and into the list, and then out of the list now there's 903, where previously there's 3,652. Now if we plug that in without copying this, Control C, V, without copying that and putting the points into the same cull pattern, you can already see what's happening. If we didn't do that and we just plug this into radius, you'll note that nothing happens. What we need to do is cull the points as well as the radiuses so that we match up. Now we have the same value of points, 903, and the same value of radiuses at 903. So that's really quite important. And now we can see here that we've got our pattern. There's a few rogue dots, and we might actually want to start fine-tuning this. So what we can do is we can adjust this slider, and we can start to eat away at our pattern like that. And we can also here adjust this domain and run it down or lift it up, and we can fine-tune what our circles are doing. I don't think I want to fine-tune the largest diameters, but definitely the small diameters to get the particular type of pattern. And I can just move these in and out so that I can start to roughly get this cloud type pattern appearing here. Now, I didn't spend a lot of time making this image, and you would want to, at Rolls Royce, they're going to spend a long time getting that right. Okay, so now that we're up to here, what we're going to do is we're going to scale these circles again. So if I take my circle and I come to transform, scale, I put that here. I'm going to take the circle geometry, and we can see that it's moved down here. Now we know why that's happening. That's happening because it's scaling everything around one center point at a factor of 0.5. So basically it's half that down here because our world origin is here down the bottom. So what we need to do is we need to take the centers. We can tidy our script up a little bit like this. Okay, and we can take this cull pattern list and plug it into the factor. And what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to give the radius a very particular size, and that size, if I can actually make a number slider by pressing spacebar and typing, for example, 1 ... 2.0. Now I've got a slider that goes from 1 to 2 in 0.1 increments. I'm going to plug that in there, and I'm going to make it slightly bigger. And you can see that what it's doing here is it's actually increasing the size of the green circle. So I can start to fine tune the circle size, and now I've got my resultant scaled pattern here. So if I turn the preview off, here we can see the pattern. Alright, so getting to this stage, it looks pretty good. It looks like everything's right. But the one major issue that we have is that the circles are changing on a gradient. They're changing from the maximum of 1 to the minimum of 0, and they're changing over a gradient. Now, when we use a leather hole punch, the holes that we might put in a machine like they use at Rolls Royce, it has very specific hole punches, and it would take them out and use them to punch the specific hole sizes that we want. So what we're going to do is we're going to take the geometries, we're going to look at their area, the surface area, and then we're going to split them into two groups. And then we're going to apply two new sets of circles to those dispatched groups. and we're going to make them 0.8 and 0.4, which matches up with the video that you can find in the link below. Okay, so what we're going to do here is we're going to measure the area. So we know that in surface area, we can measure the area of the circles. And here we've got the areas, and here we've got the centroids. So I'm going to hide those scale circles. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to look at the bounds of the areas. So if we come back to maths, we get bounds and put it here. I'm going to plug the area in, and I'm going to get a panel. I'm going to plug the panel in here, and now it's telling me the bounds. So the smallest area is 0.7 and the largest area is 4.5. We're going to use that effectively to split the groups up. So in order to do that, we want to dispatch a list here, dispatch. When we look at dispatch, it asks for a list, it asks us for a pattern, true, false, and then it will dispatch values into A and B. In order to get our true, false, we know that in maths, that greater than will give us true or false values, and we can organize the dispatching of the list. And the really neat thing here is we're going to use area in A, and then we're going to put a slider in. Now, the minimum of the slider, let's say, is 0.2 0.2 dot, and then let's say 4.50. So it's two decimal places. And we can plug that in there. And we can move this slider up and down, and we'll be dispatching circles with surface area greater than a certain value into A, and values that are less than that into B. So put our true, false statements in here. Now, the thing that we want to do is we need the centroids. So we need to dispatch our centroids into different lists. So we're going to take the centroid and plug it into the list of the dispatch. So we use the area to cull, what size, but then we put the centroids in because we have the same number of areas and the same number of centroids because they come in from the geometry. And now I have 298 values in A, and I have 366 values in B at the moment. So that's fantastic. And what I'm going to do now is I'm going to come back up to curve, and you get my circle. I'm going to have two circles. I'm going to put my first circle up here, and I'm going to copy it and put the second circle down there. And I'm going to get a value. So remember, the circle is radius. So I'm going to take A, put it into P, and put B into P down here. I'm going to hide the dispatch. Now the radius. So the cutting tools in the Rolls Royce video were 0.8 and 0.4. So for now, I'm just going to put those values into the radius. I'm actually doubling them for this demonstration, so it's easy to see, but we can adjust that. So let's go 0.8. We've got a panel here. I find if I put my mouse just behind the 8 there, it's easy to move. Sometimes panels, when they're small, can be hard to grab. So spacebar, double backslash, 0.4, enter. And then put my mouse here and drag it down. I'll plug that into there, and I'll plug that into there. And now we can see that our radiuses have changed. But for all the small radiuses now, they're all the same size. And all the large radiuses are all the same size. So this now, if we send this CAD data over to the tool that does the hole punching, it'll be able to measure them all and label them correctly for the particular tool that needs to come out to cut them. So we could effectively bake all of this geometry to a layer. But what I want to do is I want to preview the data. And the best way to preview the data is that we can come to surface. And we can use a boundary surface. So I'll make copy. And we can plug the circles into the boundary surface. Now we saw that that took quite a bit of time, 428 milliseconds. And if I plug this one into here, 595 milliseconds. Now if we go back to the start of our script and we adjust something, it will take time for this to update. So what we want to do is we want to use something new, and we have never discussed this before. What we want to use is we want to use a thing called a data dam. Here it is here, data dam. And if we go Control Alt and click on it, we can see that data dam is in params, and here it is under utilities, data dam. There's our relay that we've been dragging out. If we can drop a relay in, and we can drop a data dam in. Okay. Now, the nice thing that we can do, again, we haven't shown this, if we zoom in, we can see we get this little plus symbol here, and I get an A and a B input. This can happen. You can do this for a lot of different components that you're plugging in. I'm going to take this circle and put it into A, and take this circle and put it into B, take A, put it into E, and B, and put it into E. And you'll see that they've gone orange, because there's no data that's flown through here. This is like a tap on a pipe. If you turn the tap off, the water doesn't flow. If you turn the tap on, the water does flow. The nice thing here is if we right click, we can actually adjust and have a time. So every 1 second it'll open the tap and close the tap. So I'm just going to put that there, and we can say after 1 second the pattern came through. So we can adjust sliders and adjust update, and then every second it'll flow through and it will update the final part of the script. To match what happened in the video, I'm actually going to use some color swatches. I'm going to make 2 color swatches, and I'm going to plug them in to a color preview, which is under display here, custom preview. Oops, make a copy of that. Alright, so we're going to plug our geometry in. You can see they've all gone pink. I'm going to hide these ones here. Preview off. And I'm going to hide my circles as well. Preview off. Plug that into there. Plug that swatch into that one. And we can see that all the small ones are white. Now in the video, they had sort of nice blue, purpley blue, say blue, dark blue circles, and here they had, and so let's make this a nice deep pink color. We can change the value on them and plug that in. Okay, and now what we can see is that we've got our pattern. Alright, so that's really cool, and we can adjust these perforations. We can come back here because of the data dam, and we can adjust this greater than, less than component here to adjust our particular circle sizes, and we can see that it lags. It does lag. Okay, and we can adjust our greater than, less than, and we can fine tune our domain. But what we can do is we can paint in the image sampler. So because this has got a live link, it auto updates the image from the folder. We can actually bring in here our pattern. Now I actually want to turn, I've got the 3D data from Rhino in here. I actually want to make sure I turn that off when I save my file. I didn't do that before. And what we can do is I've got 2 layers and a set of colors. And we could grab a brush and we could sort of just start to draw some kind of random cloud shape. There's some kind of formation of a cloud. It might come out, it might come down here, like that, let's say. And we might have something else coming out here, around, like that. We'll just infill it quickly with the paintbrush. Now, I've got a brush that has a blur on it. So it's a soft, round brush. Then we can come to the layer above. We can change it to, I've got this, I had like a grey colour. And we can paint over the top of that layer with the grey. Now the grey is what's going to get us the small circles. We can paint that around. Like so. Alright, so we've added a little bit of detail there. And let's have a look at it in regards to that pattern. So it cuts across a little bit. That's alright. Let's hide that and go File, Export Quick PNG. It'll export back to the folder that we have. Yes, replace it. And now, when we go back to Grasshopper, what we'll notice is we've got this extra pattern down here. So if we wanted to trim some of this off, we could go back and paint it, but we could also remove it. Let's go back and quickly paint it. And let's get the eraser and turn on our layer, and let's erase away. Is this working? Which layer have I got turned on? Let's just erase away the grey first, and then let's go to the black layer, and let's erase away the black like that. Go back to our grey. Alright, so now we've erased that bit away. Let's do the same up at the top here. Let's just take this section away like that. I think there was another little bit here. Let's just remove that away. Alright, and let's go File, Export, PNG, Save, Yes. Now when we go back into Rhino and it updates, you can see that those points disappeared. But that little point is there, and I think it's because if I go back in here, I didn't hide my layer lines. So I need to hide the lines and now export that image again. And when we come in, that pink, this dot disappeared. Yeah. So now we've got our pattern, it's all controlled. And we could now effectively export these circles to a layer and save them as a DXF and take them into our cutting program. Alright, thanks everyone. Hope this has been useful, and I will see you on the other side.